I'm going to start us off into the formal part of this event with a land acknowledgement. So we're gathering here to reflect on the food system, and we think it's really important to recognize the position that we're reflecting on it from. So most of us in this room are settlers on this land. It's the ancestral homeland of the Beothuk and the Mi'kmaq on this island and in a province, also home to the Inuit and the Innu, who are the original peoples of Labrador. And as we work to make our food systems more equitable, we need to recognize the damage that
Your mic isn't on.
Oh, I think it is.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yep, I'm just not holding it close enough. Sorry, Karen, thank you. As we work to recognize the damage that colonization has inflicted on people, on food systems, and on the environment. And so we really believe at Food First that food justice needs to be a part of the journey towards reconciliation. And that we need to support Indigenous food sovereignty in whatever form Indigenous communities want that to take. Those concepts are a big part of our strategic framework. Integrating that is a big learning journey for this organization, and so we are looking to you, our partners, to help keep us accountable on that. And we encourage you to join conversations at whatever tables you're a part of as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm going to walk us through what we're going to do with the talking portion here today. As an organization, Food First NL's mandate is to advance the right to food, so we're going to spend a little bit of time giving you an overview of where this province landed from our lens on the right to food last year in 2024. We'll talk about the four pathways to impact that we organize our work along: advocating, organizing, taking action, and valuing people. We're going to give you a transparency report. I think it's important to share money in, money out, what we're doing with it. And a little bit of look ahead to 2025, and then there'll be time both for questions and Ambush. You are now our first focus group to help us re-envision this physical space that you're sitting in today. So you've just been voluntold to be part of that. We will make it easy on you, but we do want to pick your brains a little bit while we have so many of our good friends in the room. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the right to food in 2024. And I think, yeah, it's okay either way. I don't know what it would. Better this way?
Yeah.
Sounds good. So what do we see in 2024? There's a few big points that'll be pretty, I think, familiar to most people in this room. One is that we did see food insecurity continue to worsen. We're always a couple years late on the data here, but we know it's now 26% of people in this province are food insecure. That is a huge number, and I think equally concerning for us is that almost 9% of people in this province are severely food insecure. So in common language, they're going hungry, and that's the highest rate of any province in this country. That I think puts a lot of gravity to this work. It's something we're watching really closely. It's obviously connected to something that we see, which is a continuing crisis in the price of food. We still see food prices going up way faster than inflation and the rest of the economy. That is putting a ton of pressure on people. On the plus side, though, in terms of the right to food, we also saw a really historic shift this year. There are lots of people in this room involved with the school food ecosystem. This province is moving towards having universal school meals for everyone from pre-K to grade 9, and that is a really significant move towards realizing, or more closely realizing, the right to food. Tons of people here have done a lot of work on that. On the process side, too, we've seen, I think, a mixed bag. So last year we talked a lot about basic income. We still are talking a lot about basic income, but that process has been moving slowly. You know, there's an all-party committee doing a lot of work on this, but the report is still in draft. It hasn't come out yet. We were hoping to have it last year. Not giving this thing out to my government friends, I know how this goes. But it is, I think, one thing that we need to realize is that this has been kind of fits and starts. This province is still a real leader on basic income, but we're also waiting for that report to come down for the all-party committee to speak to it. Similarly, you know, this year's been interesting in that the minimum wage process, minimum wage review went through this year, but the committee's report wasn't public. So we don't have as much of an eye on kind of what the thinking is around income supports. On the plus side, though, we have seen a lot of progress this year on access to country foods. And again, there's a bunch of people in this room who've worked on these kind of initiatives. on connecting people back to wild foods, game, berries, food from the land, particularly for Indigenous people in this province. This is critically important. There's been a lot of great work done, particularly within the healthcare system, but also elsewhere. And there are lots of folks, again here, who've had a role in that. So what do we got in 2025? If we could tell you, we would be making a lot of money in the betting markets right now. There's a few things we know, obviously. One is that this is a 3-election year, right? We're going to be voting municipally, we'll be voting provincially, we'll be voting federally. This is the time to corner people and get them talking about food and about food security, about the things that need to change to realize that right to food. So we know that's happening. What we obviously don't know is what's going to happen with the trade war that could or could not happen next week, right? And that, if it does happen, really fundamentally redefine what our food system looks like in all sorts of ways. And we do not have a crystal ball on this here, but it's something we're thinking about, obviously. And I think when we return to this next year at this update, it'll be probably something, if it does happen, it'll be something that's incredibly impactful. I think we're also looking to see some of the really progressive policies from the provincial government, particularly around poverty reduction, are starting to mature. They're going to start showing up in the data. The new disability benefit is going to roll out, which we think could be really impactful on food insecurity rates. So in 2025, that should start showing up in some of the data we start to capture. And that's really important. So where do we fit in? That's the right to food. That's kind of our, as much as we can have a crystal ball on this, that's what we think. And obviously all of this is in much more detail in our annual report. We'll share the link at the end of this chat. One pillar of our work is advocating, and one big piece of that work, as many of you know, is a project called Next Steps for School Meals. And Ashley, who's leading that work, is standing in the back way. There it is. So as we mentioned, there's a huge transformation coming along in our school food systems right now. This year was a full year of engagement. We hosted a large national gathering. Lots of you were there. There have been now 7 different surveys. The biggest one, which is out now, is closing in on 6,000 responses. So this is a really massive piece of work. Focus groups, workshops all over the province, a big advisory committee who just met this morning. There is a ton of work happening to envision what our school food systems could look like in the years to come. There's also a lot of work happening, as we mentioned, around country food. The Labrador Anchor Collaborative, there's a number of folks from that table. I see Heidi here, for example. So this is a joint group of Indigenous governments, food organizations, the Health Authority, and the provincial government working on using the healthcare system as an anchor to strengthen access to country food. We hosted a country food summit in Goose Bay this year. We got meals on plates in long-term care. There's a few of us got to show up at the long-term care facility in Goose Bay and serve up. And what we're really doing with this is building the evidence base to bring more country food into patient settings all over the province, and we really think that things are moving well on that. We've also been busy, as we usually are, on policy advocacy work. We've been, as you know, if you've ever done this with us, we don't usually sign on to anything ourselves, but we try and do things jointly with our partners. And so this year, multiple different policy submissions. We've been involved in a number of national advocacy campaigns, consultations, and we've been in the media as much as we can to try and bring the message around the right to food to as many people as want to hear it. And that's been, I think, a real success for us this year, and something that's really going to grow in 2025. The next pathway for Food First NL is organizing, and this is really our bread and butter work of working with the dozens, probably hundreds of organizations in this province who do work with food, on food, attached to food, that helps people access food. And this was a really busy year for that organizing work. We support a number of different networks that let people work collaboratively on this stuff. So we are now working with Community Food Centers Canada to convene an Atlantic advocacy network, and Laurel, who is by the door and is probably still by the door, and is giving you the peace sign from the door, is coordinating that. So she's been reaching out to organizations working on poverty and food insecurity from all around Atlantic Canada. Yes?
Hang on. I probably should have maybe saved this to the end, but
That's all right.
I'm thinking about, what about people that are in between two brackets? I'm not considered disabled,
Mhm.
but I am inside. And I'm not a senior. And there's a lot of things out there that I'd like to become a part of, like maybe starting up right in my area, a community food garden.
Mm.
Where would I even go to find out the information about actually starting something like that? Who would I see?
You can talk to us. We have toolkits and resources. We have someone who can help you walk through those steps. So that actually an excellent segue. Thank you. But seriously, feel free to reach out to us on that because we do have. We just refreshed our community garden toolkit, for example. So there's actually quite a bit of resources out there if that's something you wanted to do. There are a number of other networks we're trying to support, so we provide kind of backbone support for a network of community organizations called Basic Income NL that works on basic income. We're also providing some staff support for an Atlantic group that does the same thing. We co-chair with Heidi from the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador a food security working group, which recently passed, how many meetings? We're in the past 100. That's been meeting since COVID as a multi-sectoral table where we can share ideas with each other about solutions here. Lots of people in this room have been on those calls. And most recently, we've helped start up the Atlantic Food Action Coalition, which is an umbrella organization for this kind of work at the Atlantic level. So ourselves and our peer organizations from the 4 other Atlantic provinces are building a small organization together. This year, as many of you know, we also, one of our portfolios of work is around food charities, supporting food charities and rethinking the food charity system. A number of things went on this year on those files, and Maddie is the lead on that. There she is, sorry. I was looking for you back where you were before. So come talk to Maddie about rethinking food charity. Maddie just finished co-leading a pretty large survey of food security for the campus food bank at Memorial University. We've been participating in a number of national gatherings and conversations, working with Food Banks Canada and partnering with our Lived Experience Advisory Group and the CBC to bring some of these conversations out into the public. The third pathway that we follow on our mission here is taking action. And so this is where Food First NL operates programs directly. So a lot of our work is networking, connecting people, advocacy, but there are times when it makes sense for us to be on the ground running programs. And this year was a really busy and I think successful year for many of them. One that many of you be familiar with since we're in St. John's is Food on the Move. So Sarah Crocker is there and Les is back there, no longer out in his orange vest on the parking lot. So Sarah and Les are the leads for Food on the Move, which as many of you would know, it's a mobile, affordable food market. Travels around St. John's, pops up, usually with a number of partners along, including the public libraries, Newfoundland Labrador Health Services, loads of other folks. And with the ongoing crisis that we're in with food prices and food access, we really feel like Food on the Move is more important than ever. The numbers would bear that out. Our sales went up by 75% this year. So it's gotten a lot busier at Food on the Move. We have a new home base, which you're in. So there's a Food on the Move now has a workspace back there. We have an electric vehicle for the program, which has really cut down the costs of running it. Now that we don't have to pay gas or rent vans, all those kinds of things, it's parked over there. And we're just having a lot of fun with it too. The partnerships that have emerged are really strong, particularly with the public libraries. We've seen a lot of uptake in their services, traveling with Food on the Move. So we now operate from here as one of our sites also, and we just added a site at the College of the North Atlantic, which has been incredibly busy. I see Sarah and Les come back from that one every time looking a little bit blasted. But this program can, what's that?
Like 100 customers in 2 hours.
That's a lot. It's a lot. But this program continues to grow, and it's a really important contact point for our organization with people who need help with food. And it's not a formal contact point, but it's a critical one. The other big social enterprise in the Food First NL portfolio is not in St. John's. It's the Western Newfoundland Food Hub. So their crew is not here with us today, unfortunately. But they've had a really big year. So for those who don't know, the way the Food Hub works is it's an online store that any local producer in Western Newfoundland can add themselves to. You order from the store, we send an electric van around to the producers to pick everything up in bulk, bring it to the hub. You get a box with your name on it that could have things in it from 40 different producers. And this year we added that electric van, which means our costs went way down to run this program. Also our greenhouse gas emissions went way down, so it's a double win for us. And it keeps growing. Customers are up by 46%. We've almost doubled the number of producers in the system. We've added pickup locations, so now you don't have to get into Corner Brook to pick up your order. We send those packed boxes back out to Pasadena, Deer Lake, Wiltondale, Electric Siding. That'll keep growing in the next year. So we really have, I think, a lot of faith in this model and a lot of sense that one of the ways forward in rethinking our food system is the role of nonprofit food retail, right? And it's, we're not looking to put Sobeys out of business here, right? But there are so many use cases where there's a business model that can work, but it's a nonprofit business model that provides food at a lower cost, more accessibly to the people who need it, but also creates a sustainable business. And that's, I think, something that we hope that more people think about in the coming years, because it's a really important part of the system. This year also was the end of one of our on-the-ground projects, so Great Things in Store wrapped up this year. So for the last 2 years, we've been working with small retailers all over the province, supporting their ability to reach folks in lower income households and support those folks with access to food. So there still are some ongoing pilot projects happening. And a few of them are complete. And we're still in touch with a lot of these retailers who are moving forward and keeping this work going. Because this was always meant to tool them up to be able to support their community in a way that makes sense to them. And we do think, again, in the kind of rethinking what the food system looks like in this province, that bringing small retailers into the mix when we're talking about solving for some of these problems is really important. And we were really glad to learn a little bit about how to work with the private sector, because people's lives and rhythms and ways of communicating are really different, and it was a really powerful process for us. And then another exciting on-the-ground thing that is happening is this place. So ourselves and Stella Circle, who many of you know and work with, we are jointly leasing this space from the City of St. John's. We took over the keys in the summer. And we are now just about to launch a community engagement process, because we're just about to start really re-envisioning this space physically and programmatically, figuring out what it's going to do. We have a vision for it as a space that will be a roof over all sorts of community food programming. So we know, for example, that Food on the Move markets will operate from here. The Hungry Heart Cafe will soon be opening on the backside in the cafe area right there behind me. We know that there will be other food-based programs, but there's a lot of space now to figure out how can this building and this facility serve the community as best they can. Allison from MQO is here. MQO is leading some community engagement on this for us. So this is the focus group that we're going to pull you into in the Q&A section. And also I'd highlight that out in the lobby as you're going, there are little exhibit charts. So if you have ideas for this space or things that you think we should prioritize to happen here, so we have this big community room, we have a bunch of office space, there's a cafe, there's all sorts of resources here. Please share them with us, because we're about to launch into work with a design team to re-envision how it flows, how it works, and really make this feel like a welcoming community space.
Excuse me.
Yes.
You just said a group, and it was Q.
MQO, yeah, they're a research company, yeah.
Okay. MQO.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And they're going to be knocking on doors in the neighborhood and talking to folks and bringing us a report on what the community wants to see us do with the space.
Okay.
So yeah, we're working with them. There's a chance to share ideas out there. There will be a website launching pretty soon at 77charter.ca where you can find surveys and links. There'll be some town halls happening in this space. So there's going to be lots of chances for folks to feed into this process and design this space together with us. The other big part of this work and taking action is supporting all the many other organizations who do that all over this province. This was, I think, the busiest year ever by any metric. So we had 265-ish requests for support from other organizations. Now, so that can be anything from, can we have a presentation, to can you help us start a community garden, can you connect us with a funder, 70-odd webinars, conferences, gatherings. This is kind of the bread and butter of our team, and there are a number of people here who are involved in delivering this work. We have regional food animators now across the province. A couple of them are in the room. Where's Leah now? Sorry, there's Leah. So Leah is our animator for rural eastern Newfoundland, and Les has that job for, along with his Food on the Move duties, for Metro. So if you have a food project in either of those places that you want to get off the ground or connect with other people in your regions, talk to your local animator. And there are animators for every region of the province now. And that's something that has become really important for us in figuring out how to deliver this work. The last, but I think in many ways the most important pathway to impact for us is valuing people. The work that Food First NL does is very people-driven. That's where most of our money goes. Most is on supporting a team of amazing people to support all this work that's happening out in community. So one big part of valuing people is also valuing the work and the perspectives of people with lived experience of food insecurity. And this year was the first full year. Hey, Laurel, for the Lived and Living Experience Advisory Groups. Laurel in the back, that's Laurel's other job, is being the staff liaison and support for this amazing group of people. So there are a dozen folks from all across the province with a lived and living experience of food insecurity. They meet every month. They set their own agenda. So they have advocacy priorities of their own. They advocate to Food First pretty regularly to change what we're doing. But they're also a sounding board. So whenever we map out a new program or think about a new direction for our own organization, or they are also open to be that sounding board for you folks. So if you have a program or an idea and you want to run it by a group of folks to understand what it looks like from that lived experience perspective, come talk to Laura and she'll bring it to the group. This year was kind of exciting for us. We added a number of members to the group. Some folks have moved away, and the group ran its own recruitment process, which is a really exciting moment of self-direction. They led their own participation, all sorts of things, interviews, presentations, they went to conferences, and they really pushed Food First NL to do better in lots of ways. That's one of the biggest things we take from this group. They're amazing. So next year, more of the same from these folks, and we're really so glad to have them. On the internal side for us, this year was in many ways a year settling, as longtime friends in this room know. Our team has grown a lot in the last few years, so we now have 17 people on staff. That is a lot more than there was when I started 5 years ago now. And so this year we did a lot of work to settle into both having a larger team, but also being a team that works remotely for the most part. We're distributed all over the province. We did a joint hire with Stella Circle. That's Teresa, who you probably all met coming in. Teresa is the brains behind this place. She is the one who's managing this amazing space for us. We also added a new thing in our HR policy, so all of our staff can now take food provisioning time every month. And hearing about what people are doing with their food provisioning time is like one of my favorite things as CEO. So you can book time off now to go and get your moose, if that's what you want to do. And that's been something that's, I think, been really fun that we picked. I think we definitely borrowed that from Indigenous partners all over the country who have that in their HR policies already. And this year, 5 of our staff hit 5 years with us, which in the nonprofit sector is something, and I think really means a lot to us that people stick with Food First NL. We have folks who've been here as long as 15 years. And that's really exciting. That's what this organization is really built on. And speaking of what this organization is built on, I'll give you a little peek under the hood here, what this year looked like financially for us. Oh, I switched the order of this one because I forgot that first I want to talk about what we've been doing on equity, because this is a really important part of Food First NL's internal work. We have an equity learning series, so the way it works is roughly 9 or 10 times a year, we all get together, the whole team, to take a deep dive into a topic that we need to think more about because of the nature of the work that we do. So that might be fat phobia one day, or racism. All these kind of big topics that we really need to think through. We think them through, and then we come back to that conversation and think through, what does this actually mean for our work? How do we implement some of these ideas we've been kicking around? This year we actually started bringing in more partner organizations to lead these sessions with us. So the Migrant Action Center, the CMHA, partners like that. And we really started pushing a little bit on figuring out where climate change sits in our work. Climate is affecting everything in the food system, but Food First NL is still thinking about where do we fit in on climate action, where we won't be duplicating, but we can be strengthening the work that's happening. And I think over the next year, we're hoping to keep pushing on this and to push maybe a little bit beyond equity, to start thinking about justice and what does that mean inside the organization. Now I'll get to the money part. So this is where the money came from. Don't worry about not reading this, but so you'll see this last year, we had roughly $1.7 million budget. 47% of that comes from foundations. About 22% from the province, 10% from the feds, 3% from municipal governments, and then sales are now 10% of our budget, which is an interesting place for us to be. We're trying to kind of figure out the ways of being a business owner, which is an interesting journey for all of us. And then other revenue, that's things like honoraria, some interest, all these kind of things. And then this is where the money went. And as I mentioned, we are a very people-driven team. So about 65% of our budget goes on people. About 20% goes on program expenses. About 5% to overhead. And then cost of goods sold. So about 7% of our budget is buying the stuff that we sell again. So that gives you a sense of what our organization looks like and what our priorities are in the financial side. And the last section here, and then we'll turn this into a bit more of a conversation, so thanks for listening to me, is the year ahead. So there's a few big pieces that we know are coming. One is we'll be releasing a report from our Next Step for School Meals consultation process that will provide some recommendations on what school food can look like in this province. We're also, in a couple of weeks actually, launching an Atlantic School Food Infrastructure Fund. So we've partnered with a bunch of organizations from the other Atlantic provinces and received money from the federal government. So we'll be moving money out to people who want to do school food projects. We're going to do a grand reopening on this place in a few months once we've figured out what it's going to be when it grows up and fit it out the way to do all the kind of food programming we'll want it to do. We're aiming at a real expansion to our advocacy and capacity building, coalition building work this year. And we would see a fair bit of growth in those two social enterprises and in the outreach, that number of knocks on our door that we're answering every year. Both of those we expect to grow quite a bit in 2025.